everyone. Welcome to today's webinar where I'm going to be talking about T2 corporate tax returns. We're going to do a little bit of basic preparation and I'll show you some of the electronic filing options that are available in the T2 module. I'm not going to do a start to finish return, but I will show you a lot of the key elements that will help you as you go through in preparing your own T2 returns. So my name is Sharka Hoyda. I'm a CPA CGA and a Senior Product Manager with TaxCycle. So what we're going to cover today is AuthRepBus and how to file that. We're going to talk about the T2 autofill option and the pre-validation option, GIFI import, where you're going to put your notes to financial statements and what happens with those in the transmission. We're going to do a little bit on CCA and the Schedule 8 reconciliation. We'll talk a bit about the T2 optimizations worksheet. I'll show you how to set up the corporate linking. We're going to go over the new SIR service that was added last year for S89 and T2054. We'll talk also a bit about the transmission options for foreign income for T1135, 1134, and T106, as well as the submit docs service. And I'll go over a few other worksheets that you might need to use from time to time. And we'll also talk about what you do and how, what things you need to set up in order to do an adjustment to an already filed T2 return. And we'll cover a bit about invoicing and workflow at the end. So we do have a full agenda. We're going to start with the info worksheet, which is what drives everything in your T2 return. So when you've opened up a new or carried forward an existing tax return in TaxCycle, the first thing you always want to do is double check that the information on your info worksheet is correct. So for new files, you'll be putting in your business number, your start and end tax year date, the corporation's name, language of correspondence, what type of corporation you're creating the return for. This is important because this also drives calculations within the software depending on the type of corporation that you're preparing the return for. So make sure you're selecting the correct one here. And then if there's a tax exempt status, that would go in this box down here if that happens to apply to the corporation that you're working on. So if we go a bit further down, we're going to put in all the standard information for your address, your contact person, and you can choose to use the signing officer that you've put in here as your contact person, or you can choose to use the firm. If you leave both of those empty, then you would have to enter this manually in here. Residency drives also calculations and what you will see inside of your return as you're preparing it. We're not going to show you things related to Manitoba if you're not preparing a return for Manitoba. So you'll want to make sure that you're selecting all of the jurisdictions that apply. If you're filing a CO17, then you'll also want to select Quebec over on this side. And then you'll notice that now I have some of, well, all of the CO17 options will also show on the side here once I've selected Quebec. In the filing section, you're going to want to answer all of these questions that are relevant to you. In particular, did the corporation own any foreign income property? This is what's going to trigger the option to transmit in the left side menu. So in the transmit panel over on the side here. So if this applies, you select yes. T1134 and 106 are down in this section. So if those apply, you'll select yes for those two. We did move the UHT question, which we had on info before, is now here on the engagement return or engagement worksheet. If you scroll down, if you want to keep track of whether or not you're filing a UHT return also for this corporation, you would do that here under other engagements. This will also trigger a clause or paragraph on your client letter when you're sending out that piece of information to your clients. It also rolls up into your client manager as well when you're searching your files. And then of course you've got business activity and a few more questions here that are important around the business activity. If you're filing in Alberta, because I had Alberta selected, you'll have another section here for Alberta, another section for Quebec. So you want to make sure that all of these are completed and ready to go. If you're filing, sorry, in a typical engagement for a T2, you would also, ahead of all of this, would want to, once you're finished with the info worksheet, you might want to send out an engagement letter. You may have some working paper software that you're using that already has an engagement letter set up or that you've set up in there, and you might want to use that. If you don't have access to that or not using a working paper software, there is an engagement letter in here as well in TaxCycle, and that is available from the side. You can also, F4 will bring up the quick search and you could type engagement and bring it up this way, or we have the fast find up here in the home menu as well. So you can use our out-of-the-box engagement letter. You can clone it and create your own engagement letter, but that is also another option. And in the workflow, there's a tracking mechanism so you can keep track of whether or not that was sent out and whether or not you received a signed engagement letter back from your client. So to file the AuthRepBus in TaxCycle, you can, again, you can do the F4 fast find and type in auth, and you'll see AuthRepBus is your first option. If you go to that form, there's a selection at the top of the form, and you would select the appropriate validation that you're looking for, if it's for an individual, a group of individuals, or you're filing for a firm. And then you would, I don't have, I'm just going to update all my engagement worksheet information. So now I've got all of my stuff from options is coming in here into this file. And I scroll down, I might want a level 2 authorization for this client, and I want all programs. So when I'm ready, and I'm going to select today, because I'm going to get them to sign it today. So then I can go ahead and print out my AuthRep or send it for electronic signature, get my client to sign it. When I get it back and it's signed, I can go to my transmit panel, and I'll have my transmission available here. And I need to select whether or not I've got a paper signature or an electronic signature. And I'm going to say they were in the office, I got a paper signature. And so now it's in a transmittable state. I would click transmit now. And unfortunately, our test site for this particular transmission is not connected, so I can't show you what that looks like, but essentially it will just immediately return back a completed or a successful or non-successful transmission for you, which means that CRA either received or did not receive it. And assuming it was successful, then you will have to notify your client, because we do have the 2-step process, which is in place for corporations for authorization. Your client will need to go into their My Business account. They will need to go to their profile in there, to authorized representatives, then to confirm pending authorizations, and they would confirm your authorization request. And then you would have electronic access to their CRA account through Represent a Client. They have up to 10 days to accept that authorization request, and after that it will be deleted and you would have to start over again if they don't confirm you within that 10-day process. Once you have authorization, then you can use the other services I'm going to show you, which is the autofill and pre-validation service. We'll start with pre-validate since I have this file open. So to pre-validate a return, you need to go, again, we're going to go fast find. We're going to go to our pre-validate. To get this transmission, you'll need to click yes, that you want to use the pre-validation for this T2 return. So if I click that to no, you'll see that my transmission option disappears. If I click it to yes, it comes back for me. And then what this is going to do is it's just going to essentially take your filing information. It's going to send it to CRA. They're going to do a cursory check of the information, identify any errors you might have, and send them back. And then that will drop into this worksheet for you. So an extra option if you want to take it prior to submitting the actual transmission for the T2 return. So since it's ready, I think this one is connected, so I can hit transmit. Well, I guess this one is not ready, but it was done here previously in this file, so you can see that the information did come down. And what it's going to populate is the tax information there. If there's been a change in the addresses on file, some other information along the bottom that you might find useful, and again, an optional service, use it or don't use it if it's valuable for you, but it is there. The other service, just check what file I'm in here. Because I'm in the wrong file. Okay, so for this is the file I needed to show for the autofill. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time because the data that we have that I can demo this with is quite old, but it works much the same way today. So there haven't been any changes since we initially created this service. To access the autofill, you're going to go to the Data tab. You're going to go to the T2 autofill. And if I click on that, it's going to bring up another window for me. It's just going to ask you to just verify the client. And then if you want to use a different browser, it's going to default to Microsoft Edge. But if you want to use a different browser, you can click there and select the other browser that you want to use. You would then click Next. And it'll pop up another window for you where you would log into the CRA account with your EFILE credentials, or sorry, not your EFILE credentials, with your login information for Represent a Client. And then it will present another window just verifying what it is that you want to download. Once you've done that, and I'm just going to cheat, I'm going to use the download that I have from 5 years ago. I'm going to click Next. So from that window that you have where you determine which pieces of information you want to bring in, you would come to this window next. So it's very similar to what you would expect to see if you're working in the T1 module as well. So we have the option to import a few key pieces of information, some carry forward information into a data worksheet inside of TaxCycle. So if I click Import Data, then all of that is going to come down into our autofill from Represent a Client. I'll get a message just saying when that was downloaded, what tax year that applies to, or sorry, when it was last assessed. And then if I go down this worksheet, there's a section on the refundable dividend tax on hand that's going to get populated. So some of those key carry forward balances that you need in order to prepare an accurate return will be here. And then these will also link into the relevant places inside of your T2 file. So there's also these other key pieces. They keep changing the acronyms for those. They get longer and longer. Okay, so and then we also have some information about the GRIP balances that come in as well, non-capital losses, capital losses, and then a history related to the ABIL. And then if there's a capital dividend account balance that's relevant, it will also bring in details related to that that you can use when you're preparing the return. And then right at the very bottom is the corporate data. So it'll bring in the mailing address that CRA has on file, and we will give you a review message if it doesn't match what you have entered in the file. So you'll be able to sync up your data this way. So a useful feature inside of T2 and something that you might want to think about using if you're not already using this when you're preparing T2 returns. Okay, so we're going to move on next to how GIFI import works. So I'm just going to close this file because we do not need it anymore. And I'm going to open up this file. And to do a GIFI import, you can do it directly from a Sage file. You can do it from any kind of standardized GIFI format file that your working papers might be able to export for you. And we also have the other options. If you go into your options up here and you go down to this service provider section, you can turn on those integration menus if they're not showing for you and you want to use them. So we have a Xero integration menu and a Sage accounting integration menu. You can turn those both on. I'm just going to check my invoicing options. Okay, so that's all good. And click OK. So now if I wanted to import from Sage or Xero, I now have those two options here as well for my direct import. In this case, I have a file that I've prepared for GIFI, but I'm going to go to my balance sheet so you can watch as I do the import what happens. Let's make this a bit smaller. And so I have some prior year numbers already in here for my file. And if I go to import my GIFI, I need to go and find it. Just give me 2 seconds to get there. There's my GIFI file. And voila, it instantly brings in all of the GIFI information that I had in my GIFI file. It gives me a banner across the top that tells me that it was imported, who did that, and on what date and time that was done. So you can keep track of when that data was last imported and updated. Now, if we come down a bit further, you'll see that my information is out of balance. And I don't think that opening balance is going to balance me because I've mismatched my data here. I think what I need is that number. And then I am balanced. Now it's going to tell me I don't match my prior year, but that's fine. I'm going to ignore that for this particular purpose. Now, normally you'd want those to tie so that you know that you're not missing information to be reported in the current year. So now that balances. If I go to my S125, you can see that I also brought in all of my income statement information at the same time. If I made a mistake, I can also click the undo button up here, and it will undo the last couple of transactions. So I made the entry at the opening balance. So I have to click undo twice, and I can undo the entire GIFI and re-import, or I can just re-import and it'll overwrite over top of what I had previously imported. So if you have a working paper software where you have to do an import, do the tax return, update the tax payable, and then do a re-import to just double check everything still ties, then the re-import will overwrite what you previously had imported the first time. So just something to be aware of. I am getting an audit message here that I have some realized gains on sales of investment showing, and that I don't have anything completed on my S6. So I'll want to record this gain in my S6 manager, which is not showing there. So I'm going to F4, and I'm going to go to my S6M, my capital disposition property manager. You can also do it directly on the S6. This has a few extra options here to help with the management. It's a little shorter form, so a little easier to navigate. And I'm just going to say these were some shares from Investment Co. And I'm going to ignore that. So I made $100,000 and my cost base was $50,000. So there's my $50,000 gain to tie with my income statement. You're also going to need to complete the S141, which is new in the last year, I believe it came in. They've added a few additional questions. So we now have this section on who is primarily involved with the financial information. So you'll have to make that determination and answer this question. So I'm going to say that that is a yes. And that we're only doing compilation engagement. And there's a new section at the end about who prepared the T2 return and on what basis. So I'm just going to select this one so that we can clear. That cleared the audit message. And we have a carry forward review. Okay. So now we've got our GIFI information imported. The other way that you can do this too is that if you have your Windows Explorer open and your GIFI file is in there, you can drag and drop. If you're on the S100 or the S125, you can just grab your GIFI file and drag and drop it in here. It's the same thing as going through the import GIFI menu. It will import that file as well with a drag and drop. So that's also a handy, quicker way to get there if you've already got that folder open. Then we have notes to financial statements and file notes. So in your file along the side, I'm going to just change this to show all forms. We have notes here in the identification section. So these notes are only for your own internal use. So if there's something in here that you want to track related to your client, you know, maybe you want to document their accounting system in here, or maybe you want to keep track of some transaction that they've made you aware of that's going to happen in the next corporate year, and you just want to document that here so that you've got it noted. Any notes that you need to keep related to the tax return, you can put in here. These are just for you. They don't get transmitted anywhere. For notes that go to CRA, you want to come down here into the GIFI section to the fin notes page. These do get transmitted with the T2 return. So if you are preparing a compilation engagement, you probably want to just copy and paste in your whatever financial notes you've added in here. And then this will go to CRA when you file your return. So now we have our GIFI in here, and we want to record our CCA. So I'm going to come down here to my S8 asset. So again, you can F4, S8 asset. And it looks like I already have some in here. So if I have a new one, so I have I'm gonna overwrite this so it all ties. So I have my S8. You can add a description here. And I'm gonna just update this to, sorry, that should be beginning. And my opening cost for this was And I have a class 50. And this should be with the beginning balance. Okay, and then I'm going to create a new asset that the client just bought this year, class 53, which is equipment. And I'm going to add that down here. If you scroll down to the bottom, there's a section to add new assets. So whatever description will help you track what that is what you would put in there. And I have a piece of equipment that I bought, we'll say in November, or the client bought in November. And then once I put in that date, it's going to trigger whether or not these additional provisions for CCA will apply to that particular asset. So the AIIP's accelerated investment related CCA, and then the DIEP is related to the immediate expensing, which is still applicable for assets from 2023. Anything that was in service before the 1st of January 2024, you could, where the provision applies, you could still claim that immediate expensing on. Okay, so now I have all of my assets are in there. It's calculating my CCA for me. And I want to just double check that. I'm just going to change this back to the ones that are in use. And then I have this reconciliation worksheet. So what it's going to do is it's going to take my book values and it's going to take my tax values and it's going to reconcile those for me. So there's my net book value at the top. And I don't have I probably have a variance down here. And I do of 8,001. So then I'd want to check why I have that variance. Typically, if we're following this through from beginning to end and we're tracking it from year to year, then our opening balance should tie. And then our variance generally is just a rounding variance of $1 or $2. And what you can do if it's just the rounding error is you can just add that in here. And I think I have to do this as a negative. All right, so now my audit message has gone away because it's tying the amounts that I've reconciled. So if this was me actually preparing this return, I would go and hunt for why there's such a big difference and I'd fix it. But for the purpose of this webinar, I'm just going to carry on. All right, so that's the reconciliation piece. Now, you can also, if we go to the S8 schedule along the side here, if your client still qualifies for the immediate expensing, then you'd want to make sure that you're completing this section at the top here about if there's associated corporations that would have to share that limit for the immediate expensing. And you would want to fill that out in here. And then everything else should tie from the S8 asset. At the bottom of the S8 asset is the option to change the amount claimed if you want. So TaxCycle will automatically optimize the calculation for the amount of CCA to claim based on the settings that you put in your options. And If you, for whatever reason, want to make an adjustment here, if you want to claim less CCA for whatever reason, you can just click yes to claim a different amount, and you can put that different amount in there and everything will get updated accordingly. Okay, so on the S8 here, I am just going to scroll up to the top one more time. So there is one question up here that's a little hidden, and that is if the corporation is electing under Regulation 1101 in brackets 5Q, and that is related to Class 8 and Class 43 for capital cost items of $1,000 or more. There is an election available there, and this is how you would trigger that information here. All right, so next on the list is T2 optimizations. So to get to optimizations, again, we can press F4 and type in optimizations. This is going to come in from my options. So there's some places, so there's some settings there. I'll just show you real quick. If I go into my options, and I'm just going to collapse all of these. I'm going to go down to my T2, and it is under New File. So if I come down here, there's my optimization section, and you can set this up in your options so that every time you create a new file or carry forward a file, you will be able to synchronize with this. You don't have to go in and select those optimizations every time. So if typically you want to have discretionary deductions so that there's zero taxable income without creating a loss, you can do that. Claiming maximum discretionary deductions will create a loss if that's available. Or you can maximize taxable income, or you can just turn off optimizations altogether. So those settings are available in here. I'm going to close that. And I've got it set up to go ahead and just get my taxable income to zero for this corporation. If I scroll down here, similar to T1, it's going to show me a number of field codes that are available within the software that get optimized by our calculations, and where there's some discretion in terms of what you can claim, or if there's a claim order that is available, then we'll attempt to optimize that as best we can within the software. But there may be some other circumstances that we're not aware of that might apply to this particular T2 return. And so then you can come to this optimization worksheet and create an override if you like. So maybe I don't want to claim these donations this year. Maybe I want to claim them next year instead for whatever reason. I can come down here and select yes to claim a different amount, and I can make that zero or some other number in here to claim a different amount, and I can keep track of my balance owing with my data monitor along the bottom as I'm making those adjustments to get to the result that I'm looking for this particular year. You can also, I showed you where you can adjust your CCA claim on the S8. You can also do that here. It has the same result, and those two fields will sync up when you make the change here as well. So we have some Schedule 1 optimizations, some T2 jacket optimizations, some optimizations related to the SR and ED, and then the whatever provincial optimizations are applicable to the return that you're working on in TaxCycle at that given moment. So next on the agenda is corporate linking. So I'm going to leave this file open. Just going to close some of these tabs. And we're going to go to the CGI worksheet. Now I need to open up the parent file for this. So we're going to open up this one and go to their CGI worksheet. We'll go to the top of this. So you can see that there are quite a number of schedules listed on this corporate grouping worksheet that will allow you to see in one place key balances across an associated and related corporate group. So if you've got a group of multiple companies, this kind of simplifies the work a little bit so you can keep track of how you've allocated specific balances that have to be shared across the group. And in order to set that up, we're going to go to what's going to be our source file. So this is what's going to generate the linking. We're going to create a new corporate linking file at the top here, or there is under data here, there's the corporate linking at the top as well. So you can create it here, or you can just create it here from the banner. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. And we need to put it in that folder. So we're going to save that. So now it's telling me that I've created the linking and it's recognizing this file as my source file. In order for my new file to get recognized in here that we were just working on before this, we'll go back to the file I was in before. And on the CGI worksheet, it's not connected to anything right now. Here we're going to import the existing corporate linking file, which I saved here. So that we're going to pick that up. And it's going to give me this window asking if I'm replacing an existing line on that corporate grouping information, or if I'm adding a new line. And in this case, we're going to add this corporation as another related or associated corporation in the group. So I'm going to click OK. And then it's going to bring in all of those other ones. So now I have all 4 of my corporations linked. I also get the option to open up my target file here. My source file, which is the A&L consulting. But you'll also notice that down here, I now have some of my shared balances. So there's my immediate expensing limit. So if I start putting some information here that's different, like let's say, for example, that I want to, so I'm going to go back to my other file, my A&L. So in here, if I want to allocate some other balance to Chez Pierre, say I want them to have 250,000 of this, even though, in my example, I didn't have any, but let's say for the sake of the demo that I need to allocate some there. I can do that here. And then a little bit further down, there is the CCPC business limit. Here we go. And I'm going to give them some of my CCPC business limit of, I think they only need about 50,000. So I've made that change here, but because I have my other file open, if I go back to them, then you should see that same change has also automatically flowed up to my other corporation that I have open right now. And where's that? So, and there's my business limit that I also updated in the other file. So this makes life a little bit easier. There's a number of different schedules and sections in here that get linked. So if you have an associated group, then this can help to make your work a little bit easier. If I don't happen to have these files open at the same time, it will still update that linking file in the background. And then when I go open up that target file later, it will prompt me to bring in any of the new updated data into that file so that they will always stay in sync. All right, so now I want to talk to you about SIRS. So let's minimize. Sorry, I did want that guy. we'll do it in here. So SIRS is available in T2 for S89, which is the capital dividend account balance verification, and for the T2054 if you're declaring a capital dividend for this corporation. So in this case, I'm going to prepare both the S89. So we're going to go back to F4, S89. We're going to open up that capital dividend account verification balance. And I'm going to say that this is related to T2054 I'm going to file. So I'm going to select no for the first question and yes for the second. And then you would go ahead and complete all of the relevant sections here on the form before you send that in. But for the sake of the demo, I'm not going to take the time to do that. I'm just going to show you that you can. And then we're going to go to our T2054. So F4 again, T2054. And I want to go to the current year worksheet. So there's in T2, there's a prior year, there's a current year, and there's a next year T2054 available. Prior year is to help you keep track of the CDA balance from previous years. So you can use the worksheets available along with that form in the software to update prior years so that you have a running balance of what is in your CDA account. The current year will show what you have available to declare as a dividend in the current year. And next year is if you want to prepare a filing that would be applicable to the next corporate year, that you can do that now and get it ready for filing. So I'm just going to do a current year. And it looks like we do have some balance available here. So you'll notice that it has a total of all previous years. So you can see your cumulative balance in that CDA account. And then what we've entered in the current year. And then if we come down, this is where our form starts. And we can complete this. So we didn't already file an election. So we're going to say no here. And I'm going to say I don't want to calculate it from my S3. I'm going to say I'm making a declaration of the full amount. And the date of the dividend, let's say, is July 1st. And we'll say the first payment is somewhere on the 2nd. No acquisition of control. And no, what is that? I guess it wants to be inside of, yes. Okay, so we'll make this 531. Yes, okay. And then you would complete the rest of this, whatever is applicable for your T2054 filing. And when you are ready, we're just trying to get to the date. We want today's date. Today's date, 0. And then when you're ready to file, once you've gotten, you're going to need to get your client to sign the T183 SIRS. So let's go back to F4. We're going to have to go first to our SIRS transmission service. There's an option here to paper file so that the T183, the T2183 for the SIRS authorization is not going to show in your print sets. So if you're paper filing, you can go ahead and select that. If we want to use this service to file, then we would just come down here to the filing section and we're going to select the S89 And we're going to select the current year T2054 that we've already prepared. Now I've got some audit messages here saying, did I print? I'm going to say, yeah, I did actually print this. Let me go to the Transmit tab, because I think I can do that from here. Must be printed. Must be signed. Okay. And here I'm going to say I got a paper signature for both of these guys. So now I've cleared my review messages, and you can see that my SIRS is ready to transmit. And I would go ahead and confirm that I agree with the terms and conditions and transmit now. Now this is one of the ones that will not transmit for me. So I'm going to fake it by going into my workflow, into my transmission, and I'm going to assign a number here just so that clears. And oops, that was this guy. All right, so once it's transmitted, you'll also get your transmission results will drop down into this table for you. So it'll confirm the date and time of the transmission and the confirmation number that you're going to get when you do this transmission. Now you'll see that the T2054 is giving me a review message that we need to transmit the director's resolution. So with a T2054, you also need a corresponding director's resolution for that capital dividend that CRA needs, so we can transmit it electronically within TaxCycle as long as it's sent within 24 hours of this SIRS transmission. If it's not within that 24 hours, you can still send it through your represented client portal for up to 7 days. So there is a ticking clock on this. Once we've transmitted, we got to get that resolution in. And we can go to our F4 again. To the SIRS support to do that electronic document transmission. And if I come down here, I can find the form that I need to send the documents for. I don't need to send anything for the S89, just for my current year. And I need to, it was the 1235 was my confirmation number that corresponded with my T2054. And then I would go and find my director's resolution. Double clicking here. We're going to go back to my folder. Director's resolution. And then this will give you another option to transmit the supporting documentation along the side. You would click transmit now, and it will return a confirmation number and drop the successful transmission information into the transmission results here. So that makes filing a capital dividend election a little simpler than the old paper file method that we used to have to do. Similarly, we have transmissions for foreign income, so we'll talk about those now. And I mentioned to you that those are driven off of the info worksheet. So I am going to just close all of these guys. And if I come down here to the filing section, I mentioned to you that the question here has to be selected in order to trigger that transmission option in the side. So let's close these guys down. And then when I select yes here, you'll see now I have the option to transmit the T1135. So I would then just need to go to my F4 T1135 If it's an amended one, I would click amended at the top. And for the sake of this, I'm just going to say it is below the 250 limit where I have to break out the detail. You'll notice too that TaxCycle automatically brings in whatever information it can from the info form already for you. So all I have to do is go down to the section that's applicable. And in this case, let's just say all of these apply. And I had some investments in the US and some small amount of foreign income. So now, let's see what. Yeah, so I have just the message here just saying it has to be filed no later than the due date, or there's significant penalties, which I think everyone knows by now. So I'm just going to click that off. And once again, we're going to get you need to confirm if you got a paper signature or an EFILE signature. And then it's ready to transmit. So I believe this is one. I don't know if it'll work in this file, so I'm not going to attempt it. But if you transmit now, it's an automatic transmission. You'll get an instant response, whether or not it was accepted or not accepted. And there is a 1135 transmission worksheet that will show you the results of that. For all of these foreign income forms, the 1134 and the T106 that are available in here, these each also have an electronic transmission option. And you can find them if I go to F4, 1135, and that is the FRRMS service. I think we go to the transmission worksheet for this one. And we do. So to submit electronic documents, you just come down the page to this section. And if I want to transmit documents electronically in support of my T1135 filing, I would select yes here. If I just want to keep track if I'm paper filing them, somehow mailing them to CRA, I can also select this middle option. And then I'll have a workflow, a corresponding workflow item to keep track of that work progress for me. In this case, we're going to say electronically. This will automatically populate the confirmation number that would have come in had we been able to hit the transmit button. So let's just put something in there to clear the review message. And then this works exactly the same way that I just showed you for SIRS. You would select the type of document that you're sending. You would go ahead and find that document and attach it here. And when you're ready, you would go to the Transmit tab, and there's my Submit eDocument service. And once we clear those review messages, so I guess once I attached a document here and those got reviewed, then you would be able to also submit electronically those supporting documents related to that T1135 filing. So all of that is available inside of T2 when they're applicable. And we have so much more ground to cover. So I'm just going to just quickly make some mention of some of the other filing options that are here. So we also have inside of T2 is a rental income statement. So again, F4, and if you type in rental and go to the rental worksheet, if this particular client had also rental income, passive income, that as you all know, gets treated slightly differently for tax, well, a lot differently for tax purposes, where you can keep track of that rental property here. And let's say we had some other income. Now I'm aware that none of my numbers tie, so just everyone out there, just I am aware of that, but it's difficult to demo this when I have to use multiple files. So please bear with me. Hopefully you're still getting the concepts of how you can do this inside of TaxCycle. So rental worksheet here, whatever you've entered here on the rental worksheet, you can also tie in your S8 asset. So if I go back to an S8 asset, there is a rental property drop down right here. So if I was putting in the building or maybe some equipment, appliances or something else that's attached to the building that I want to track, I can tie it directly to that rental statement as well. And then that will also regulate my CCA against that rental property income as well automatically within the software. So it'll keep track of that for you. And then all of those ones that are linked will show down here in your capital cost allowance related to that rental property. There is also a summary. So if you have multiple rental properties, you can create more than one rental statement. It will show you all of those individual rental property lines here in a summarized format for you. The other thing I want to show you here is now if I go to my S7, that rental income will automatically also populate up to my S7 for me and put it in the spot where it belongs. And here you also have the option to add your other income and pull out any piece that might be related to foreign income. So say I had some amount of foreign interest, I can pull it out this way. So it'll keep track of my Canadian versus my foreign investment income that way. And I'm always asked on this schedule as well to point out that if you scroll down this schedule, there is a section here where you would enter any specified partnership information that might be related to this corporation. So if this corporation's a partner in a partnership, then you probably will need to enter that partnership income breakdown in here so that everything flows to the correct section within the T2 return. Another option we have in here, and I'll just quickly open up a different file for this, is the farming income. The agri-stability electronic filing is available in T2. Just open up my farm file. So to record that farming income and get to the agri-stability, we'll first want to, on your S125, there's a question here about whether or not it's a farming operation. You're going to want to select yes there. And then you're going to see this farming income section appear at the bottom. And we're going to add some farming income here. So now I have some farming income recorded. And the next thing I want to do is go look for that agri form. So I'm going to F4 one more time, agri. So I have an agri worksheet and I have the inventory worksheet separately. So if probably both of those will apply. So you'll want to take a look at both of them and complete the information that is relevant. I'm going to add a pin, which I believe is correct. And so as soon as I start entering data on this form, it's going to pull in the information from my info worksheet that's relevant. 2, 3, 4, 5. That should be a 6. And that should work. And then you would complete this form. I had this as. And then down here, if I had completed that interest income on my S125, it would automatically calculate that information in here if I were to select that 125 here and link them, then anything that's related to these lines will automatically populate in where it can. And I'm just going to add my other income. And I'm not going to fill out the other form because we're running out of time, but I just want to show you that now I have that option to transmit my my agri form also in T2. So that is another filing option if you're dealing with farming income as well for your corporations. So I'm going to close this. One other worksheet that I wanted to highlight is the interest and penalties. So if I go F4 and interest and penalties, if you have a late filing corporation and you want to estimate for them what their penalties and interest is going to be, then you can come here. It's going to automatically bring in the income tax balance due. You can enter in any installment payments that they've already made before the due date. So maybe these guys already paid $50,000 of that. And then you would put in the actual date or actual estimated date that you're going to be filing this. In this case, I have to go past 2024. And I can't, this is a funny result only because I used an old file and just updated my beginning and ending fiscal year end dates. And so I confused it a little bit. So normally you would carry this forward and it would calculate those dates correctly for you. So if I went to it didn't get filed till January, so it's going to be 1 month late, then that will trigger the penalties and interest calculation. This there's a section down here at the bottom where you can add any other information or amounts that you want also to roll up into there that maybe the corporation has due or overdue. And then this number will roll up into your client letter as well for you automatically. As well as you can give them this entire worksheet if you want to in your print sets. Then quickly, I just also wanted to draw your attention to, I'm going to open this up again so you can see under the data tab. If this is a new file, then we have some quick options here that make it easy for you to transfer information you've already keyed in here on the information worksheet to another module within TaxCycle. So if this was a new corporation to me and I need now to file some T4s and T5s for this corporation, I can easily create a T4 or a T5 directly from within my T2 tax return. You can also create forms. So maybe there's some other election or form that you want to file for the corporation. You can do it from here. You can also, when you create forms, that's where you would file also the UHT return if that was applicable to this corporation. Okay, so in here, I believe this is one that I can transmit. So we need to talk about adjusting a T2 return. So we're getting close to the end here. So hopefully this works. I'm going to transmit what I have. And it did work. Okay, so we have a transmitted T2 return. Now I need to go and adjust that. Maybe the client found some extra income that they forgot to tell me about. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select that I'm filing an amended tax return. And there is also an adjustments note for T2 adjustment notes. This gets transmitted with the amended return. So you probably will want to put just some notes in here for CRA to explain to them why the T2 return is being adjusted. And once you have done that, you just simply go and you've made your updates within TaxCycle. So say maybe we had some interest income. It's going to go in other income probably. So maybe they had some interest income that we didn't account for. Then it should also give me okay. There it is. There's my banner. So it's going to ask me, do I want to rename my file? You've adjusted it. And I'm going to say, yes, I do. I want to rename my file. And I'm going to save that. And then I can dismiss that banner. And then it's going to give me another banner that says, do I want to see my changes that I've made and take an amended T2 snapshot? So I'm going to first look at my changes. And so this is going to show me all of the fields that got changed with my adjustment. So if I go here, and you'll see now that this is an orange color, and if I hover over it, it's going to tell me what my as filed amount is. So I can quickly double check my work and make sure that my amendment is the way that I expect that it should be. And if I'm all good there, I can go to my transmit. And I'm going to just dismiss the results here. And then I'm going to, I didn't add adjustment notes after I finish telling everyone you need to. Okay, and then my assets and liabilities are out of balance because I added an amount and didn't balance it. But assuming that that was balanced, then I would now be able to get that transmit again option here, and I would be able to transmit now that amended return to CRA. And I'll probably, and I would recommend also taking an as amended T2 snapshot in here as well. So that is how you go ahead and amend a return. And then finally, I just wanted to cover some of the invoicing that is now available in all of our modules. So at the very bottom here is a billing section, and the billing worksheet is where you're going to enter all of the billable work that you've done. And you can choose your options for how you want to invoice. If you want to invoice by schedule, which I entered in my pricing. So I had a flat amount for a T2 return and an hourly rate on top of that for additional time spent. And you have the option to show or not show all the detail on your invoices. I also added an admin expense, which just automatically covers some of my supplies for doing the return. You can add a discount here if you like, if it's applicable, if you wanted to offer that. Your tax information gets set up in your options and then flows down here into this worksheet as well to automatically calculate the taxes. And then what we did here was we created a separate payments worksheet. So once you've done this and you want to post it, you can post it either to Xero or QuickBooks. And there's a link at the top. If you click that and connect into whatever bookkeeping software you're using, then you can automatically post this invoice across into that software. And if you're not doing that and you're keeping track of your payments inside of TaxCycle, then there's the payments worksheet that you can go to record any payments that your client made. And so if I received payment in full, probably not cash, but maybe they gave me a e-transfer for the full amount. Probably a decimal in there. So now it keeps track of whatever balance owing here. So, and also the previous version of our invoice only had an option for one payment, and we recognize that some clients can't always pay the full balance all at one go. So sometimes you might see more than one payment there. Now, if I go back to billing, it's going to put a paid stamp on there as well for me so that it's really easy to see that the invoice went out and it's already paid. What would go to the client would be this nicely formatted invoice that is available in templates. So this is out of the box. And of course, if you wanted to create your own invoicing template, then you can certainly do that. The one last thing that I wanted to mention in here is that we did make a change where this preferred name is now being recognized in our templates as part of the salutation. And where you're going to see that calculated is here on the engagement form. If you go down into the engagement section, there is now a salutation field here. If you don't put in a title, it will automatically calculate as dear first name or dear nickname if there's dear preferred name if there's a preferred name entered. but that will show here. So what's going to be on your letter will show here. And if you don't like this, you can override it here as well to address your client however you would like to do that within your practice. So that, oh, sorry, and I did want to show workflow real quick. So workflow is track along the side. You can also trigger it in options to always pop up when you save your file. And this will keep track of the status of your file. Many of these are automated as you're working along, and TaxCycle will just update for you as you're doing your work. We'll keep track of basically where you're at. And also this workflow will flow up into Client Manager, so you can do a quick filter in Client Manager to find files that are in a particular state or ready to e-file, or you're waiting on client. So this information will all flow up into there, so it's easy to find. And we've covered a lot of ground today. Thank you all for sticking with me. I hope that you found this useful, and I hope that you enjoy, get more out of your T2 tax cycle going forward. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.